Ever stop to think about those legal heavyweights? The ones who don't just stick to a simple party line.
Yeah, I mean, there are figures in law who seem driven more by, let's say, core legal principles.
Right, and their actions can sometimes, surprise you, given where you think they stand politically.
Absolutely. It makes you look beyond the surface labels.
Exactly. So let's dive into Paul Clement. This guy is, well, a genuine legal legend.
Conservative, superstar lawyer, former Solicitor General.
And argued, over 100 cases before the Supreme Court? His career is just packed with major legal battles.
No question. His track record in appellate law is immense. He's a huge force, especially in conservative legal circles.
But here's the really interesting part. Okay, he's known as a conservative, sure. But some recent moves, some cases he's taken, they seem to point to something deeper.
Like a commitment to the rule of law itself.
Yeah, exactly. And the adversarial system. And sometimes that seems to put him, at odds with his expected political allies.
And that's a key distinction, isn't it? Advocating for a specific political outcome versus a commitment to the actual structure and principles of the legal system.
So that's our mission for this deep dive.
Right.
We really want to unpack what makes Paul Clement tick.
Right. Look at specific examples.
Like his challenge to Chevron deference. His representation of Mark Meadows.
And that WilmerHale lawsuit against the Trump administration, that was definitely noteworthy.
Yeah. So each of these cases gives us clues, right? Clues about his legal thinking and maybe what it says about the bigger legal picture.
They really do. It's about understanding the nuances.
Okay. We want to get past the conservative superstar label and see what drives these actions that don't always fit neatly into a partisan box. So, where do we start?
Well, I think the first thing is just acknowledging that complexity. Someone can be strongly associated with conservative legal thought, but still operate from these core legal beliefs that aren't purely partisan.
Yeah, our sources really hammer that point home. Clement doesn't fit easily. There's this, professional code underneath it all. Almost seems stronger than pure ideology sometimes.
And his own words kind of back that up, don't they? Like when he talked about the WilmerHale suit.
Oh, right. He said it was absolutely critical to vindicating the First Amendment, our adversarial system of justice, and the rule of law. That's pretty direct.
It really is. It highlights that commitment.
He gets called a constitutional conservative, a rule of law institutionalist. Sounds academic, maybe?
A bit, yeah.
But the core idea seems to be that, for him, the process, the legal fundamentals often matter more than maybe a short-term political win.
And if you think about it, that connects to a belief in the system's long-term health. It only works if you uphold those principles consistently, win or lose politically in the short run.
We've seen him act on this in pretty big ways.
Yeah.
Like leaving King and Spalding. That was huge. And it was because the firm backed out of defending that law about same-sex marriage.
Right.
That couldn't have been easy.
Definitely not just a simple career change. It suggests he's willing to put his principles, about a lawyer's duty to represent even unpopular clients above maybe job security or firm politics. Makes you wonder.
And then it happened again, leaving Kirkland and Ellis after they decided, nope, no more gun rights cases.
Right. Given his known views on the Second Amendment, that's another major stand on principle.
So leaving these huge, prestigious firms, it paints a picture, doesn't it? Someone really sticking to their guns, so to speak, even under pressure.
It really does. It's quite something in that high-pressure world of elite law firms.
Deepak Gupta, he's another appellate lawyer who put it well, said Clement has this steadfast commitment to lawyers' obligation to zealously represent unpopular clients and is willing to stand up for his principles.
It really captures that core belief in the lawyer's role.
Which kind of makes you think, doesn't it? What is the lawyer's role in society, especially when things are so divided? Clement seems to argue that defending even controversial causes is vital.
Absolutely essential for the whole system to function fairly for everyone. That seems to be his stance.
Okay, so beyond these principled stands, let's get into how he argues. What's his actual method in court? His strategy?
Yeah, the sources point to a really consistent style. He's known for what they call structural argumentation.
Structural argumentation.
Right. Plus a real focus on the actual text of the laws, textualism, and the sensitivity to how our institutions, the Constitution, are all designed to work together.
So structural argumentation. It's like, instead of just making isolated points, he's building a whole logical system with his arguments.
Exactly. Think of it like designing a building. Each point isn't just tacked on. It's part of the essential structure holding the whole thing up. He shows how the law fits together coherently.
Huh. So it's not just about winning the one case in front of him.
Not entirely, no.
It's about making sure the win makes sense within this larger, well-reasoned legal picture.
Precisely. The idea seems to be to ground conservative outcomes, for instance, in this broader constitutional and professional framework, so they look less like just partisan wins.
And more like logical conclusions based on established legal thinking.
Exactly. It's about building that foundation.
That's a really interesting way to put it, like building a legal edifice brick by careful brick.
Yeah, influencing the long-term trajectory of how the law is understood.
Okay, let's make this concrete. Let's dig into some of these big recent cases. First, Loper Bright Enterprises v. Raimondo, overturning Chevron deference. That was a big deal in administrative law, right?
Oh, huge. A major shift. So Chevron deference basically was this long-standing idea that courts should defer to federal agencies when they interpret ambiguous laws they administer.
Right. If the law wasn't totally clear, the agency's take often carried the day in court.
Mm-hmm. And Clement successfully argued against that. His win there really pulls back on the power of federal agencies to make rules based on their own interpretations.
Gives more power back to the courts then.
Essentially, yes. More interpretive authority shifts to the judiciary.
Wow. That sounds like it could really change how government functions.
Mm-hmm.
What was the core of his argument there, basically?
Well, obviously the details are super complex, but the main thrust was likely about the separation of powers, arguing that, interpreting the law is fundamentally the job of the courts.
And that giving too much leeway to agencies kind of undermines that role.
Exactly. Upsets the constitutional balance between the branches, that sort of structural argument we were talking about.
Got it. Okay, next case. Representing Mark Meadows. Lots of political heat around this one.
Yeah.
Remind us of the basics.
Sure. So Mark Meadows, Trump's former chief of staff, got indicted down in Fulton County, Georgia, related to the 2020 election stuff.
Right.
His team tried to move the case out of state court and into federal court. There's a specific law for that, 28 U.S.C. Section 1442A1. It lets federal officials move state cases if the charges are about things they did in their official job.
And the whole thing hinged on one word, didn't it? Does officer in that law mean only a current officer? Or can it include a former officer like Meadows was at that point?
That was the crux, yeah. The 11th Circuit Court said basically office means someone currently holding the job.
And their reasoning?
Well, common understanding of the word, plus they noted that other parts of the law do specifically say former officials, suggesting Congress knew how to make that distinction when it wanted to. So they ruled against Meadows.
Okay, so then Clement comes in, petitions for the full 11th Circuit to rehear it. What's his angle?
His big argument was about the precedent this sets. He basically said, look, if officer doesn't cover former officers under this law, you're giving a green light for local prosecutors to bring politically motivated charges against any former federal official.
Not just White House staff?
Nope. People from the executive branch, Congress, even the judiciary, just for actions they took while they were in office. He painted it as a serious threat.
That does sound concerning. Potential for political payback using the courts?
And Judge Rosenbaum, in a separate opinion, agreeing with the outcome but expressing concern, she called it a potential nightmare scenario.
Nightmare scenario.
Yeah, where former presidents, cabinet members could face a barrage of politically driven local prosecutions for official acts. She actually urged Congress to fix the law.
So Clement's argument wasn't just about Meadows specifically. It was way broader, about protecting the functioning of government from political interference through prosecutions after someone leaves office.
Exactly. Highlighting a potential vulnerability in the system with potentially huge consequences.
Okay, now for maybe the most surprising one. Clement, suing the Trump administration for a law firm, WilmerHale, a top conservative lawyer challenging a Republican president. What happened there?
Yeah, that definitely raised eyebrows. The background was this executive order from the Trump administration that seemed to single out WilmerHale. While the order criticized the firm pretty openly for representing clients the administration didn't like the DNC, the Biden-Harris campaigns, and also for having lawyers who worked on the Mueller investigation, it looked like retaliation.
So using presidential power to punish a law firm for its clients and its lawyers.
That was exactly Clement's argument. He called it an unprecedented assault on a bedrock principle. Lawyers shouldn't be penalized for who they represent.
He even brought up John Adams, didn't he?
He did, defending the British soldiers after the Boston Massacre, using that historical example to show this long-standing principle of representing unpopular clients.
Powerful stuff. What were the actual constitutional arguments in the lawsuit?
It was a multi-pronged attack. First, First Amendment violations, arguing the order chilled free speech, the right to petition the government, freedom of association for the firm, its lawyers, its clients.
Makes sense. Punishing them for who they associate with or speak for.
Second, separation of powers. Arguing the president was overstepping his authority, trying to punish a firm and interfere with the judicial system, which needs independent lawyers.
Basically saying the president can't use executive power just to hit back at legal opponents.
Right. Third, due process. Lack of notice, no chance to respond before being targeted, vague language in the order itself, just not fair procedure.
Okay.
And finally, he argued it messed with the right to counsel, making lawyers hesitant to take certain cases, which hurts the whole adversarial system, and maybe put unconstitutional conditions on government contracts, too.
And it's interesting, wasn't WilmerHale kind of unique in fighting back so hard? Weren't other firms targeted too?
Yeah, some others mentioned, like Jenner and Block also sued, but reports suggested some others, like Skadden and Paul Weiss, maybe made concessions. WilmerHale with Clement really drew a line in the sand.
Really stood on principle there.
Seems that way. It definitely underscored their commitment compared to maybe more pragmatic responses elsewhere.
Okay, one last quick one. Clement's involvement in the Eric Adams case in New York. Not representing Adams, right?
No, totally different role. In that situation, a federal judge actually appointed Clement as an independent advisor.
An advisor to the court.
Exactly. To help the judge evaluate a motion to dismiss the corruption case against Mayor Adams. So he's offering impartial legal expertise.
Not taking sides, just giving his expert legal opinion.
Precisely. And that appointment itself says a lot, doesn't it? About the respect he has in the legal community, his reputation for sharp legal thinking, and being seen as someone who can offer objective advice.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. We've gone through Clement's background, his approach, these really key cases. What's the main takeaway from this deep dive?
I think the big picture, what really comes through, is this principled stance that often goes beyond simple party lines. You see this deep commitment to the rule of law, to the structures of the legal system. And these recent cases challenging Chevron, the Meadows arguments, especially the WilmerHale suit, they really show him defending what he sees as fundamental legal principles, even when it's politically inconvenient or goes against expectations.
So maybe the final thought for listeners. What does Clement's career, these fights, tell us about, the role of lawyers today, and how important it is to defend these core legal ideas in such a polarized time?
That's really the key question to ponder, isn't it? Clement's example suggests that maybe the highest calling for a lawyer involves this fidelity to the system itself, something that can and maybe should transcend partisan politics.
Like an independent legal profession is crucial.
Crucial for safeguarding the rule of law for everybody. His willingness to challenge actions from different political sides really highlights that.
And if you, the listener, want to go deeper, definitely check out the cases themselves.
Yeah, Loper Bright, the Meadows removal attempts, the WilmerHale lawsuit, reading about the actual arguments is fascinating.
You can really get into the weeds of the legal reasoning and think about the potential impact.
Absolutely. And understanding these kinds of legal complexities, it's just increasingly vital if you want to be truly informed about the forces shaping things around us and the principles holding it all together.